So we should be recording now.
Yeah.
As we just said, we've been talking for about 10 minutes and then realized it's probably a good time to record. So Gus, thank you so much for joining me on this call and I suppose helping to kick off this 21 half marathons in 21-day challenge for Gotcha4Life. Most people will know you as a radio and TV personality, I suppose best known for Triple M. But not being Australian, I think my first proper introduction, I knew of you, but my first real introduction to some of the work you're doing with Gotcha4Life was through the amazing Man Up documentary. And I remember somebody putting me onto it and saying, oh, you've got to watch this. And I started watching it on the train back from work. And I had to turn it off and finish watching it at home because it was just so powerful. So that's where I suppose I'd like to sort of kick off in why did you make the Man Up documentary? And then how did that lead into you setting up and founding Gotcha4Life?
Well, thank you, Mark. Firstly, thank you for having me a part of it. I love the fact you're running for Gotcha4Life. The first time we met in North Sydney, it was just straight away, we had so much fun and there was a real synergy there between the two of us. So I'm so glad that we've become friends and that friendship, I think, will blossom. For me, Man Up was a bit of a journey on why so many Australian males take their life every day. I was told the figure of 6 a day, more than 8 a day Australians will take their own life. It's the #1 way for an Australian male aged between 15 and 44 to die. And I just didn't believe that stat. I just couldn't believe it. I'd lost a friend of mine 11 years ago, and he to me was an absolute star. And that was my journey to work out why he took his own life. He was, to me, the greatest bloke that I'd ever met. He seemed to have all the answers to everything, every problem that I ever had. He seemed to come up with the right solution. He was good looking. He had a good job. He was president of Palm Beach Surf Club. He was married to my cousin, had 3 beautiful children. And on the day that his 3rd child finished HSC, which is like the A-levels in England, he took himself off to a garage and took his own life and put a little note outside the door to the lady that he rented the garage from saying, please don't come in, phone the police. So up until minutes before he took his own life, he was still thinking about other people to make sure that lady wouldn't walk in and see him. And I just couldn't believe it. I went to the police and I said, you've got to investigate this. There's no way a bloke like him would take his own life. And of course, I was just uneducated. I didn't realise that he's exactly the type of bloke that takes their own lives, because in Australia, and I think in the UK and certainly in America as well, we are built to bury those emotions. You know, she'll be right. I don't want to hassle anyone with my dramas. I'm going to get on with it myself. I don't need to ask for help. I don't want to hassle people with my problems. And we've taught that from a very young age. And we're taught not to cry, not to show emotion. So Man Up was a real investigation from my point of view on the Australian male and masculinity and how it kills us in the end, that type of attitude. So talking to so many men on Triple M every day, as well as the Man Up documentary at the end of that, we've had 70 million views of Man Up, went around the world. We gave it away to the world. And so many people just said, you've got to keep going with this. You know, we love your simple way of explaining it. So I started Gotcha4Life, and Gotcha4Life is all about finding that one person who you've got you for life, no matter what. Warts and all conversations. They won't judge you. They'll love you no matter what. And taking a conversation away from jokes and weather and sport and family and actually going that 2nd, 3rd, 4th question, that little bit deeper. So at least you've got someone in your world that you can talk to about everything, warts and all. So you're not worrying alone, because we're finding people worrying alone way too much, Mark.
Yeah, definitely. I love I agree with, I suppose, what some other people have told you, your way of sort of simplifying it and getting to action. So how did you find it when you were, let's say, when you were going and speaking to your mates? How did you go about changing that conversation then in the first instance?
Yeah, I had to completely be vulnerable. So I had to be ready for them to give me a little bit of, you know, good-hearted ribbing.
Yeah.
You know how mates sometimes, and I hear it all the time, that the more you take the piss out of your mates, the more you love them.
Indeed.
And to a certain degree, that sort of sense of humour and stuff is very similar in England and Australia. And so you
Yeah.
don't be too precious. You make sure you can have a laugh at yourself. But if you keep telling people how you're truly feeling, is it just get that sense as a friend when a friend is telling you something that's really important rather than just banter?
Yeah.
It's just that beyond the banter. It's that next level. And if you pick the right person in your friendship group, I didn't walk up to my group of mates out at a State of Origin or an FA Cup night and go, hey, boys, before the game starts, just got to let you know, going through a bit of a tough time, need your help. You've got to pick, timing is everything, right? So I picked one of my friends and I just said to him, I need to have a quiet cup of coffee with you. In fact, we met for lunch one day and I told him how I was feeling and he just listened. And he then gave me what he thought was the best advice he could give me. And then he told me his story. And I realized then that he was as vulnerable as me, but he hadn't actually reached out to anyone. He was keeping that within himself. So then all of a sudden we both gave each other what we needed, which was that mateship turned into friendship. And I then just went, wear my heart on my sleeve sort of bloke anyway. And believe me, I've had some moments where I've been very vulnerable and mates of mine haven't been able to cope, you know, and they shy away from that. And so I just realized that friendship is on that level. It's not ever going to get deeper than that. And that's fine as well. We don't need lots and lots of these Gotcha4Life mates. You just need at least one. If you have a few, then you're absolutely hit the lottery. And if that one is ending up being your partner, your life partner, whether it's your boyfriend or your girlfriend, if you've got that person as well as being them, you Gotcha4Life friend, well, you have literally hit the jackpot, because most blokes find it very difficult to talk to their partners about things that are super vulnerable. I still don't talk to my wife about certain things because, I don't know, I still want her to think that I've got the answers and stuff. And she knows that I don't, and she knows I get help from other people.
Of course.
But I don't know, there's just something there that stops me being totally vulnerable with her. And talking to a male mate, I find it easier. But I got lots of other mates who have their wives, and they are the luckiest blokes in the world.
Yeah, I agree on that. And so, I mean, that's a really good point about if someone, let's say I'm struggling or a person's struggling, but then what, and we talked about this briefly before the call started. If you think, and I've had a few people reach out to me over the last year since I've sort of been vulnerable at the beginning, saying, I've got this friend, so and such has happened. I want to reach out. I don't know how to. What would you say there?
I would say you got to bite the bullet and just go, right, I'm going to do it. And it's not easy. You know, the words coming out of your mouth saying, I love you, I'm thinking about you, and I just got this feeling that you're going through a bit of a tough time, and I want you to know that I'm there for you no matter what. Those words for me are quite easy to say, but I know for a lot of blokes, they don't have what we call the emotional intelligence to have that conversation. The words just won't come out no matter how much you want to, because we've never been taught how to have that conversation. We've been taught to basically, you know, take a teaspoon of cement and harden the you-know-what up. You know, man up and shut up and get on with it. Stop whinging and telling everyone else your problems. Sort it out yourself. That's what Granddad was taught. That's what my dad was taught. And of course, what has he taught me? And in the playground, at some stage, I fell over and scraped my knee. And instead of crying and getting a cuddle from the teacher, you know, I got up and was told by my group of mates, just suck it up and get on with it. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't cry out in the open anymore. I could only cry in my own bedroom. Or we hear now through the programs we support at Gotcha4Life that kids are lying to their parents, walking past them, going straight into their room and crying into the pillow under the doona, or they're crying in the shower. Because the shower noise will take over the noise of them crying. And these are kids, every single time we have them together in a safe environment, at least half the kids will say that they cry alone at least once a week. And I bet you most parents would think that their kids are pretty happy and they wouldn't be in that situation. We've got to change it. We've got to be able to have a boy or a girl come home from school and say, when they get asked, how was school today, they've got to be able to stop, put their bag down and say, you know what, mum and dad, or you know what, mum or dad, I had a real tough day today. You know, I was picked on, I feel as if I'm not going to make the team and I'm really worried about that, or whatever, having a real proper conversation of gravity. We just don't do that. Our worlds are so quick. We just brush through them and we just disconnect everywhere. So we need to teach the kids that. So I would say, getting back to your original question, you've just got to go for it. And like everything, thinking about it is worse than the actual doing most of the time. So just decide to do it. And I've said to other people, if you can't say it to them, then text it to them, email it to them, do a voice recording on your phone and just tell them how you feel. If you can't do it face to face, it's much better to get the message out in some other way using technology than just not talking at all. It's better to have an awkward conversation now than have no conversation at all once you're going to their bloody funeral, which has happened way too many times.
Yeah. And you just reminded me actually of a conversation I heard between you and Tom Harkin of one of your program partners, Tomorrow Man. That I really found helpful to me as well, because I've got loads of really good mates, loads of banter, and of course it's on that level. But one of the sort of real takeaways for me when you're speaking to people is you ask the question and then you shut up. Whereas my natural response is to try and fill some of that gap, that awkwardness with a bit of banter. But one of the things that you guys were talking about was you ask the question and then you just shut up and you sit in that silence and that awkwardness for a bit.
And it's horrendous. That silence,
it is awkward, but I've used that a few times with a few different friends over the last year, and it's just been gold. You can feel the awkwardness and you're sort of sat there, and the good thing is, you know, it's coming. So you can never prepare for awkwardness. This is probably a good segue to talk about mental fitness and emotional muscle in a second, but just being able to sit there in that awkwardness, I found just brilliant. And as you mentioned, you don't have to know all the answers and you can just listen. For me, that was just brilliant, because really all you're then saying is you just go, you be vulnerable yourself and you ask the question and then you just listen. And then you try and work it out together.
The most important thing is sitting in awkward silence and not trying to fill it up. And the Poms and the Aussies are the greatest at filling that gap with some smart ass comment, or changing the subject before you've got to the absolute crux of it, because you're like, oh, I'm out of here. I'm out of control. I'm slipping. I can't get my grip back. I don't know where I am. So I'm out. I'm getting out of this real quick smart. That's why I love Are You OK Day initially. But Are You OK Day now needs to be, if I said to you, are you okay? You can easily say, mate, I'm fine, Gus. No worries, mate. Training's going well, the family. So you just start rattling off all the stuff that you can easily talk about. Training, work, family, how your body's feeling, how you going, big fella? Oh, I see you lost some weight. What about the Aussie cricket team? We're going to get you in the Ashes. Whatever it might be. Oh, Liverpool's not going to win the comp now. The competition's not going to start again. All of a sudden, we're away in this conversation. I have a 20-minute conversation. I go, oh, really enjoyed that conversation with Mark. Gee, we had a good time. Gee, we had a good laugh. We haven't talked about anything that's really important. Whereas if you said to me, Gus, I'm really worried about you, you're working too hard, and, you know, I can start seeing something you might have seen, and then you just... and waited for me to actually have to answer it. And then if you're not happy with the answer, say, Gus, that's not what I meant. What I really meant was this. And then all of a sudden, that 20-minute conversation, I feel, geez, Mark's A, noticed, he cares enough to have the guts to have the conversation, and then B, he sat there and listened to me. Like, there's a reason we got 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should be listening twice as much as we are talking. And that's my problem too. It's a real discipline that I have to keep working on. I tried to become a lifeline carer on the phones, and I just kept mucking it up, talking too much. And so they said, why don't you just host our fundraising events? That's more your skill set. So, you know, you've got to find your spot. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Sitting in awkward silence is so much better for 5 seconds than the consequences of your friend burying their emotions and eventually it toppling over. And hopefully it's not suicide, but just not living their full life, just continually being mentally unfit. You know, do your friend a favor by just sitting in some silence, could save their life.
Yeah. And yeah, going back to, I suppose this, I love your analogy of mental fitness and building emotional muscle. Would you mind just, I suppose, touching upon that? Because I think that again goes nicely into talking about some of the program partners that work with you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to, as soon as you hear mental health, it does give you a bit of a negative connotation. It makes you think, I think straight away, you know, loony bin from the movies or TV shows and stuff. You've got a mental illness, mental health, it just gives you that negative connotation. So we've turned it around to talk about mental fitness. So you've got your physical fitness, and you'd say at the moment you're probably a 9 out of 10 physically in terms of your fitness. I used to be a 2 out of 10. I'm working up to like 5 out of 10, and I'll be running that first half marathon with you on Monday.
Good, Gussie.
But it's going to hurt. I went to my physio this week, and she's like, she's booked me in for Tuesday. She knows we've got an hour session on Tuesday. But the thing is, my mental fitness is really strong. So don't talk about mental health, talk about mental fitness, and give yourself a mark out of 10 for that. How much are you having really good, deep conversations? How much are you quite free in your head? How much are you not snapping at the kids and not being abrupt in traffic? Or just how are you in terms of your own melon between your two ears? Give yourself a mark out of 10 for your mental fitness to go along with your mark out of 10 for your physical fitness. And that gives you a mark out of 20. Then you'll know what you need to work on. And so I know I need to work on stuff with my physical fitness to get my fitness up. And so there's exercise, isn't it? I can go to the gym, I can lift weights, I can walk, I can run, I can jog, I can do push-ups, sit-ups. That's just all out there. Everyone knows that. So what are the exercises for mental fitness? And one of the biggest things for mental fitness is actually having a deep conversation, of what we call a conversation of gravity, where it actually means something, where at the end of that conversation, you end up having a hug rather than a handshake. You know, like I met your father a couple of months ago when your father was here. You know, his first initial thing was to, you know, give a handshake. That's what Pommy men do if they're 60s, 70s and 80 years of age. My father-in-laws do the same thing. Well, I went straight in and nestled in there and gave him a cuddle, and he was like, oh, but he was fine with it. And your mum was straight into the cuddle and stuff. But I want to go there straight away. I want to show a bit of vulnerability. I want to show that I'm caring and loving and stuff. And that to me shows that you've got you're mentally happy and out there and having a ball and stuff. And I can then have a conversation with you where I feel if you might be overdoing things, and you and I have had discussions before. I have chats with Tom all the time, Tim at Gotcha4Life, my son, my group of mates who I went walking with this morning, where I will grab one of them and say, hey, mate, I'm just feeling that you're not quite connected at the moment. Is there something we want to talk about? And we drop back in the group and we have the conversation. So I'm really aware of people around me and making sure that they know they can talk to me if I need to. And I've got my Gotcha4Life mates that I can talk to as well when I need it. So, but that takes time and effort, and it takes awkwardness, and it talks about sitting in that awkward silence we just spoke about. And it means that you might muck it up a few times. But if it's coming from a place of love, and it's coming from a place where people go, you know what, he genuinely cares, then normally you can sort of bumble your way through it. It won't be perfect, but gee, it's better to have a bumbling, awkward conversation than no conversation at all.
Yeah, 100%. And just going back to some of your program partners to understand how that works, and I suppose how you support them, because I suppose as well as understanding more about you and what you're doing in the Man Up documentary, there was Tom Harkin from Tomorrow Man. Yeah. And I thought Tom was just amazing, absolutely amazing. And what he did in your son's school, and just watching that develop in the second episode, just blew me away, absolutely blew me away. And that for me made me think about my relationship with Alfie, my son, and this is something I need to do to be able to support him going forward as well. So can you just, I suppose, elaborate on those program partners, how you support them, and I suppose a bit more about what they do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, basically that second episode at my son's school changed my relationship with my son as well. So what
Mm.
you felt when you were watching it and then you then thought about it with your son Alfie, I did the same thing with my son Jack. And it was basically allow him to know that I didn't have all the answers. I think a lot of dads, a lot of the time, we just make up the answer because we don't want to come across as if we don't know it to our kids. You know, I think we get a free pass until we're about 10 for most of our kids. You know, they
Yeah.
ask us a question, we can pretty much say whatever we want. They'll accept it. You're a superhero without a cape, and you just move on. And then they start to work you out once they hit sort of 12, 13. And my son certainly was starting to work me out. And I didn't have the emotional muscle, the skill set to be able to say to him, oh, Jack, I don't know the answer to that. Why don't we work it out together? I would just make up the answer or use a bit of common sense and hope that I bumbled something together that he would accept. But at the end of the day, that day at Valley Boys, when I met Tom, I left that school going, every single school kid in Australia needs to have that session with Tom Harkin. He built such a beautiful, safe environment to have a conversation where blokes who turned up thinking, oh, this is an off day at school, I don't need to do lessons. And they were playing on their phones and mucking around. Within half an hour, they are all looking up at him like sponges, like Labradors waiting for a treat. And they were taking in absolutely everything. And then one bloke was vulnerable, then another boy was vulnerable. And then everyone started rallying around the boys that were being vulnerable. And then the ones that hadn't said anything for an hour and a half, all of a sudden, they put their hand up and they want to say a story, which is really deep and really full on and really powerful. There's no way they would do that normally. They'd probably never done that before. So I just knew then that Tom Harkin had to be supported. And I said to him, what's your business look like? And it was pretty much him. And we then, we need to get insurances sorted out. We need to get you a place, a roof over your head so you've got an office. You need to do this and that. So started fundraising for him. And now his wife is involved and she's got the program Tomorrow Woman. And they have gatherings, which is the evenings for the blokes equivalent for the ladies. So you've now got Tomorrow Man, Tomorrow Woman. You've got blokes nights. You've got stuff at schools and sporting clubs. And you've got the gatherings and that sort of stuff with the girls. So they would probably be our biggest partner that we support. And their programs have pivoted really well in the last couple of weeks to going online. I was really worried about it, Mark, to be honest, whether or not we'd be able to build such a safe environment online. But what we've found is that a whole lot of blokes were never going to turn up to a surf club or a scouting hall or a school or a sports club to turn up and sit amongst 150 blokes and be vulnerable. But they will in the privacy of their own home on a computer where they can mute it if they want to, turn off the video, they can have a moment, or they can just go if they want to. You know, it's hard to just get up in a group of men. It's been so powerful that we're actually now thinking that we're going to have more virtual programs than we will actually physical programs. It'll probably be a 60-40 split. Whereas before this pandemic, we didn't even think about putting this program online. We thought there's no way you can build the safety in a room on a Zoom call. But we can, and the technology allows us to do it. So that's been a very big positive for us. So going back to Tom Harkin, they would be, majority of our money goes to Tom and will continue to do so because he just does brilliant work. But once you're in the field like we are, you then come across all these other really cool people as well. So China, John Harper, who you would have met in the Man Up program as well, he works for a mob called ROC, which is a rural outreach counselling setup. And he does wonderful work like Tom does, but out in the country, talking to older blokes and farmers who understand him because they know him because he's a farmer. And, you know, it's not like a city bloke going to the country telling blokes in the country what to do. So we look after John and the guys at ROC, and then we look after Man Anchor, which is a bloke called Steve, who I think you've met, who does wonderful work as well. He's got a whole heap of different courses, and he's been
following him online for a while.
Online.
He's a very good speaker, and again, like Tom, and yourself, it just seems to, you know, you simplify things to a nice way where you think, oh, I can actually take that one thing and I can implement it in my life with my friends or my family straight away, which is great.
Yeah, and that's what you wanted. When you came away with Alfie, you sort of my relationship with my son straight away, I just said to him, mate, how was your day today? Because he was emotional. I was there in another room watching, as you saw on the documentary, watching it through a little monitor. And at the end of it, I came out and he was there and he had tears in his eyes, and 2 or 3 other boys that I knew really well from his sports teams that I've known from primary school, they were all there. Yeah. And I'm wondering if I should ring their dads up and tell them what I'd just seen and how vulnerable those boys were, or whether or not that was just something that had to stay in the room and let the boys deal with it in their own way. Anyway, we're all just hugging each other, and I said, I'll give you a lift home, boys. And just the chatter in the car was just so open, honest, and vulnerable. There was none of the nonsense that we normally talk. And don't get me wrong, I don't want every conversation to be deep and meaningful, and I don't want us to burst into tears every time we talk. But I think 90% of the time we can talk banter and work and all the stuff we're comfortable with. But at some stage, you've got to allow yourself that 10% just to take the pressure valve off and have a proper conversation of gravity. Yeah. That afternoon was amazing. And my son and I then realized that we had a deeper, meaningful relationship. And I was able to say to him, mate, I'm not sure. And he'd go, well, Dad, I'm going to Google it and then I'll come back to you and then we can discuss it. And I'm like, yeah, of course, that makes sense. Let's do that. Rather than me making it up and then backtracking later once he works out that I was full of shit. And a whole lot of blokes out there are wondering how they can be the best possible husband, the best possible worker, the best possible dad, the best possible friend. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're trying to do at a level that is just way too high for what we need to be. We should be able to bumble along and do some things really well and other things not so well. And when you don't do things well, you got to go, well, I'm working on it, but that's and just have that really be vulnerable, and that's okay. So we look after an Indigenous program called Weave, and there's Banksia Group that do great work, Waves of Wellness. There's a whole lot of really cool people that we support now. And that's my job, is to go out there and fundraise as much as possible. And then if we've got some people out there doing great work, let's collaborate together. And how can I help you? Do you need funds? Do you need skills? I've got lots of people in my network that can come into a business and look at it and help with accounting or help with marketing, communicate, whatever it might be. And that way, I think we'll build a happier, healthier mental fitness network without any ego, with a whole lot of people that just want to get that bloody suicide rate down to 0.
Yeah. And so that's the main goal of Gotcha4Life.
That's right. And I reckon if we get it down to 0, we would have done a few things, i.e. change what it takes to be a man, throwing away a few things from the man box, fewer things from the girls, ladies, woman's box, and go, right, this is how we do things now. We don't have to live up to an expectation or a stereotype from so long ago. It's actually okay not to have all the answers. It's okay not to be okay. And you've got a whole lot of really beautiful discussions happening all over the planet where people are putting their hands up and asking for help. I mean, what's the first thing that you do, Mark? If someone came up to you at work, or someone in your running community, or one of your friends came up to you and said, Mark, I need your help, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, would say no worries at all.
I'll do it.
Where should we go and chat?
Correct. That's it. So do that. Do that. So do that to other people. They'll do it to you. And all of a sudden, we've got all this connection and people loving and caring for each other and people helping each other out and having deeper, meaningful relationships, rather than these relationships at the moment that are just sort of a bit just on the surface. Like I say, you don't need to do this with everyone you meet, but at least have a couple of people, if you can, where you can have that conversation, and they can hold on to how you truly feel, and they can help you through stuff. Because I truly believe that suicide is a death of loneliness. You feel disconnected, you're worrying alone, and everything just becomes way too big, and eventually it just takes over. We've got to be able to have an outlet to be able to talk about your feelings, and what we're trying to do is build those skills up so you can ask for help. Yeah.
And I think that's I'm just conscious of time. I think that's a perfect place to sort of leave it. No, I could talk to you all day. What about the run on Monday? What time? I'm thinking I need to start about 5 o'clock because it's going to be a hot day. Well, when are you thinking of starting? 5 o'clock as well.
Okay.
So we'll both kick off at 5.
So what should I do? Should I FaceTime you at like 10 to 5?
Yeah, you can.
And we just say, mate, we're on the starting blocks, and then when I finish, I'll FaceTime you and whatever.
Yeah. Before I just stop recording, I want to do the quick fire with you.
Okay.
So, favorite race?
New York.
Oh, do you listen to music when you run or work out?
Yes, I do. I've got a Spotify sort of Gus playlist, and it's a combination of sort of boppy tunes and sort of Lionel Richie and Rick Astley and Stevie Wonder. A few country and western ones get thrown in there. Spotify can listen to what you like and then put together playlists for you. So sometimes I just take theirs on, but yeah, I find myself much quicker and much more disciplined and stay to a decent pace if it's just me with music. When I'm chatting and walking with mates, I'm all over the place.
Yeah. How many pairs of running shoes do you own?
Two pairs of Hockers.
Good choice. Because we got Roger from Hocker on later. I think it's the second week.
Okay.
Who is the biggest?
Talking about lunatics, he is the biggest lunatic. We did the Tough Mudder together. He did it literally walking backwards, holding on to 2 or 3 of my mates and hoisting us over all the different things we had to jump through and jump over.
I'll have to ask him about that.
So easy. He did it so easy. The bloke runs 100 kilometres as a warm-up.
Who is the biggest influence, or who has been the biggest influence of your life?
Oh, it's got to be my mum. My mum was a single mum pretty much, and she was absolutely amazing, and she certainly made me the man that I am. But I've been with my wife now, that you know, my English Vicky, for nearly 30 years. So I've got to put a lot of what I am and what I try to be down to my wife.
And last but not least, what is your favorite quote? I love quotes. So do you have a favorite?
I do. It's a real simple one. It's one that people tend to sort of say a little bit off the cuff, and I'm not sure if they totally mean it a lot of the time, but treat people the way that you want to be treated. And it's so easy to just to say, but it's so hard to actually do, and most people fail at it. And it's literally just coming back down to the most basic human instinct, which is kindness. Just be kind. You know, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know the journey that they've had. So don't judge them and make up your mind based on your own stuff. Be kind every time you meet someone and give them the benefit of the doubt. Yeah,
love it. Yeah, we use that a lot in our family, obviously with 2 young kids. And the last question, where can people go to find out more about yourself and Gotcha4Life?
Yeah, so Gus Worland is all over the place in terms of all your socials, your Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and so forth. And Gotcha4Life is Gotcha4Life, which is GOTCHA, the number 4 life.org. That's our website. But if you just put Gotcha Gus, it'll pop up on Google. Then that gives you all the program partners we look after, gives you our aims, what we're trying to do, all our board and ambassadors, and keeps us up to date with all the stuff we're trying to do out there to try to get that suicide rate down to 0. And I cannot wait for Monday morning, brother, to support you in your first one. And if it goes well, I might support you in your last one as well. But
very cool.
I'm very, very, very proud of you and how you've pivoted through this to be able to still do what you're trying to do. And of course, Brisbane to Sydney will always be there for you once the world gets back to normal. But, you know, thank you for supporting Gotcha4Life. And it's always inspirational and fun talking to you. You're a really good man.